Sonia Sotomayor. You see my book there. It's the first thing a book that I've ever written. I've written a lot of legal opinions and a lot of papers in school and things like that, but I never had written a book. And students like you were the ones who motivated me to write the book, because I meet with students a lot, and they would ask me a lot of questions, and I realized, I can't meet every student in the world. So maybe if I write a book, some of them will read it, and they'll have their questions answered. I've often said that I've done some very special things in life. I'm on the Supreme Court of the United States, and there's only 9 people there, and we have our jobs for life, and that's a pretty neat job. I got to swear in the vice president a couple of years ago when the president and vice president had won their election, and I swore in the vice president, and that's pretty neat too. But I think the thing that shocked me the most was my book becoming #1 on the bestseller list. And the reason for that is, when I was your age, I didn't really write English well. I've been pretty smart when I was in school, and the school I went to, most of the tests were multiple choice, and I did really well on multiple choice. And the occasional paper I had to do, I had a lot of good ideas, and I think the teachers gave me good grades because I had good ideas, but they weren't really correcting my writing. And the reason it was so weak is that I spoke Spanish before I spoke English at home. And so a professor finally in college, in my first paper, I went to see him after I had gotten a C. It was the first C I had gotten in years and years and years. And I said to him, why? And he said, there's great ideas in here, but you can't write a full sentence. You're thinking in Spanish and translating into English, and it doesn't sound right. It took me 3 years in college, and with his help, to figure out how to write English well. And what I started to do is I got grammar books. Do they even use grammar books in school anymore?
I don't believe so. Not in high school.
Oh my gosh. This new stuff is really bad, guys. But grammar books back when I was in school used to teach you how to write sentences and all the rules about writing. And so I bought grammar books from 1st grade to 12th grade, and I read them again to teach myself. And then every time I did a paper, he would show me a mistake I had made. And so the very first thing he showed me was, the very first sentence of the paper I gave him said, authority of dictatorship. I'll never forget this. And he said, it's dictatorial authority. It's an adjective, so it comes first. Go. And the reason I did that is because in a lot of phrases in Spanish, a lot of adjectives in Spanish, it's shirt of cotton, not cotton shirt. So I was translating from Spanish with the of, and it was making my writing very stilted. So the point of this story. I come from a background perhaps similar to many of you. I grew up in a housing project. We were, by most definitions, pretty poor. When you read the book, you'll learn my dad was an alcoholic. He ended up dying at 42 years of age because of his drinking. And my home wasn't that happy when I was growing up. And that's probably one of the reasons I didn't learn how to write well in school when I had the chance. Yet, right now, I can tell you that I'm probably one of the few people you'll ever meet that will tell you that I'm living a life beyond anything I dreamt about. Because when I was your age, I had no idea what a Supreme Court was. So you can't dream to be something when you don't know about it. So I've gone much further than I thought when I was a kid. And it's been a very hard journey. because success is never easy, but it's possible. So I think that's why your teachers and counselors wanted you to come talk to me about those possibilities. So it is not, it's not impossible, guys. Although I don't sugarcoat things, it's not easy. So I know you have questions prepared, some of you for me, but how about not those questions, because you would ask me that over there. How about the rest of you? What's interesting you? Oh, gosh, you're ready. Okay, she beat you to it.
She read your book already.
Ah, all right, tell me your name.
Brianna Williams.
Brianna, what year are you in school?
A junior.
A junior, are you thinking about college?
Yes.
I really hope so.
What made you go to Yale?
As you know from the book, I didn't really know what an Ivy League school was when I was applying. It was pure luck that I had a friend who had gotten into Princeton, which is another Ivy League school. And I didn't know what they were, but basically what they are is among the oldest schools in the United States. And they're considered the top schools in the country. And when I was going to college, I didn't really understand how important that was. Any college can give you a good education, and wherever you go, you can make of that college what you want. You can make the experience you want. But there's something, when you can put on your resume that you're from a place like Yale, some people pay more attention. It's not a good thing, it's not a necessary thing, but it does help a little bit. So I got to Princeton by accident, but by the time I got to Princeton, I knew what the two top law schools were, and they were Harvard and Yale. So we didn't have internet back then, and you couldn't really investigate on the internet the way you can today. The best I could do was try to meet people who had gone to the law schools there. And all of the people who had gone to Harvard would say they were the hardest years of my life in law school, but I loved it. And all the Yale people said they were the best years of my life, and I loved it, and that's it. And I figured, I'm gonna go to the school that people didn't say. And it worked out well for me, but that's how I ended up with Yale. Sometimes when you don't know, you try things and don't know to be worried. Like, since I didn't really know how hard it was to get into Princeton, I almost applied blind. And when I got in, everybody else was shocked, but I really didn't know what had happened. And it was almost the same thing at Yale. After I got in, I found out, oh boy, this is a small class. There's only 170, well, actually in my year, 150 people there. That's pretty small. You had a question.
Oh,
And tell me your name
my name is Rosalie Sannon. I go to Palmer 6. I'm a junior.
as
I'm-
well.
Yeah, I'm going off how you said we could ask stuff that's not really about court and all that.
I'll tell you, you can ask anything you want.
So,
If I can't answer you, I'll tell you.
right. So I'm in theater at my school, and we have we've been putting on a show about bullying. It's called The Weight of Words, and we have a show tomorrow at 7 at school. And my teacher told me to bring you a flyer.
That's the show.
You know something, sweetie? If I wasn't going back to New York in the morning, I would be there. But I have to go back, and because I have an appointment starting at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
How about a special show tonight?
I'll bring my mom. Anyway, how's that? The weight of words, I like this. Tell her you honored your commitment, okay?
I'll have the photo proof.
Yeah, the photo.
All right, yes, tell me your name.
Okay, I'm Isis Benjamin, and I'm in 11th grade, and I go to Palm Beach Lakes as well. What interests you in law the most? Like, why did you want to?
You're going to hear my speech, so I'm not going to
Okay.
give you, that is one of the, that's how I'm going to start,
Okay.
okay? So I won't answer that, but I will tell you, I've often been asked a different question. If I wasn't a lawyer and a judge, because a justice is a judge, what would I do? And I often tell people, I don't think anything else. Because unlike a lot of people, I knew what I wanted to be since I was about 9 years old. You'll learn that in my book if you haven't read it. And so I think that's a gift. My niece, who's now 26, just last year figured out what she wanted to do. And she was a little worried because her father and I had known what we were doing very early in our life, and she was upset that maybe there was something wrong with her. No, I think she's normal. We weren't normal, okay? One of the bits of advice I would give you when you go to college, okay? We tend to know what the possibilities are within the worlds we live. And that means that we don't really know what all the possibilities are, because you're going to watch TV and you're going to know what some jobs are from TV. You might read some things about other jobs. Your family and friends may have even other jobs. But the world has countless different jobs. So how do you find out about them? Well, you do by going to college and keeping an open mind about what you take. A lot of people go in their first 2 years of college and they say, you know, I really should be a scientist. I really should be a lawyer. And I'm going to take pre-law classes. Or I'm going to be this and I should do just that. I don't think that's the purpose of college. I think the purpose of college the first 2 years is for you to get a well-rounded education. Take courses in things that you don't know anything about, but seem important. For example, economics. Every time you pick up a newspaper, you're reading about the economic condition of the country. And you should know the theories that people are talking about when they're talking about economics. Are you ever going to use it? I don't use it every day, but I understand it and I can read it. Take a religion course. You think you know about religion? You really don't. There's so many different religions in the world. And we're in wars because of some religions. You should learn a little bit about what's happening in the world. It's important to make you both a more interesting person. But it might teach you something about something you may want to do. And you're thinking, religion? Don't say no until you try it, okay? Take an art course. Have you been to museums and you hear the people talking about the pictures? And half the time you're a little lost? So was I when I was your age. I took an introductory art course. Now I can walk in and when they say to me, this is an impressionist, I know what they're talking about. It's those guys who didn't paint like the old guys did. They used to paint lifelike pictures. And the impressionists, just like the word sounds, used to paint pictures that gave you the impression of what they were looking at, what the light did, what colors do. This was a radically different form of art. That's why I'm saying, spend a little bit of time in college doing things, taking courses on things that interest you, and some things that don't, just because there's some things that you should know about in the world. So, regrettably, be like my niece. She finally decided she wanted to go into environmental work, and she's getting a master's degree in that. But as I said, last Christmas, her mother and I were in the kitchen preparing Christmas dinner, and I said to her, Kylie, when are you going to figure out what you're going to do? And she said, by the time I'm 30, I'll figure it out. And I looked at her mother and said, 4 more years of this, 5 then. 5 more years of this? She says, well, at least you got an answer. I don't get one. So, yes.
Okay.
Tell me your name.
So my name's Ejala Pottinger, and I'm a junior at Palm Beach Lakes High School. So you're one of the 9 justices, which is really cool because that's what I want to do when I grow up. But I just want to know, what is your everyday routine like? Like, what's it like to wake up and be one of the 9?
Strange. Not your question. My life. When I was named to the Supreme Court, the morning of the president announcing he had picked me, I had been in the back room with my family and the president and vice president. And my nephews are talking to the president about soccer. And my brother's talking to the vice president about golf. And I'm sort of shaking my head and looking at this picture and saying, I don't quite believe this, okay? And they shoot everybody into the front where the announcement was going to be made. And the president and vice president and I remained, and one was on either side of me. And we were walking from the back room to the front where the press conference was going to happen. And they have very long legs. They're both very tall. And they were walking a lot faster than me. And at a certain point, I fell behind and I whispered, please wait. And they turned around, looked at me, and smiled. At that moment, I had an outer body experience. I was filled with so much emotion that I knew I wouldn't be able to get my speech out. And so I had to sort of detach my body from that place. And for about a year and a half, I felt like I was up there, my conscious part was up there, looking down at me doing things. Because if I felt the emotions, they would overwhelm me. I'm not that way now, but there is a little bit of disbelief often. This sense of, what am I doing here? How did I get here? I don't ask that so much because the book helps me figure that out. But there is often a sense of, why? Why am I here? And I don't think that any justice ever fully answers that question. You just have to trust that you have a role to play. You can't control what that role will be because, you know, justices take cases. They come to us. We can't pick them, like go down and make the case. But whatever my purpose is, I figure I just got to do what I think is right to do. And so that's what I do. So what's my day like, to answer your question? It's going to sound boring to you. Don't let it get boring. Okay? Don't think of it this way. I have two kinds of days, all right? Argument day. And those are 5 days of the month. 3 days 1 week, 2 days the following week. Maybe some weeks, months, we have 6 days of argument. And each day we have, on average, 2 cases in the morning. Occasionally we have a third case in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, okay? On those argument days, I'll get into the office a little bit early to see if we've received anything from the lawyers who are going to appear before us. Sometimes something comes up and they send us something the night before, so we walk in the morning just to make sure we've read whatever they've given us. And then we go into court. The 9 justices meet in the back. We have a tradition. We shake hands. And we don't start a day without shaking hands with each other. We then go into the court. And everything in the Supreme Court is by seniority. You go in the order you got to the court, okay? Everywhere you walk in together, you go by seniority. It's funny, we're like ducks. We fall right into place, okay? I'm the second from the back. And so, because there's one more justice after me. We're there in court together, and we're asking the lawyers questions. Now, imagine that you're a lawyer. You have half an hour to talk. That's all you got. And there's 9 people asking you questions. And the 9 people often don't agree. So they're asking you questions that contradict each other. They're stepping on each other's toes sometimes because somebody starts talking, or 2 people start talking, and then you'll see them look at each other and decide who gets the turn, okay? It's pretty tough for those poor lawyers. We then break at 12. And if we don't have any cases in the afternoon, we have lunch together. That afternoon, I'm preparing for the cases the next day. Because on a Monday, I've come to the office on Sunday to prepare for the cases on Monday. So Monday, I prepare for the cases that are on Tuesday. And Tuesday, I do the same thing for the cases on Wednesday. Oh, no, let me finish. We have a few minutes more, okay? And on Thursday, I am sort of Wednesday afternoon and Thursday during the day, I'm doing two things. I'm looking at all the writing that's going on. Sometimes I'm working on my own opinions. Sometimes I'm working on the opinions of my colleagues. Sometimes I'm reading the bench memos that my law clerks have prepared for me to tell me about an argument that's coming up. I mean, there's always a lot of reading and writing. On Friday and Thursday, we prepare for the conference we're going to have on Friday morning. On Wednesday afternoon, we vote on the cases we heard Monday. All right? The Tuesday and Wednesday cases, we vote on Friday morning. And after we voted on the cases, we go through all of the cert petitions. Petitions for certiorari. What does that mean? I don't know why they use Latin, but they do, okay? Those petitions, or those certs as we call them, are people's pleas for us to take their cases from the courts below. And we get 8,500 of them a year. And every Friday, we go through a bunch of them. So divide up 8,500 by 52 weeks, and you get an idea, it's a pretty big number. We're going through a lot of those cert petitions on Thursday, reviewing them, and then we vote on some of them on Friday. So that's an argument week. There's always groups of people who come to the court. We meet with them, talk to them. There's often visitors from around the United States, other judges. We get a lot of judges from around the world. We get sometimes ministers of justice from foreign countries. Ministers of justice in foreign countries who sort of run the court system. And so they'll come and study our system. On the weeks that we're not in argument, we're preparing for those cases that are coming up. We're reading the briefs and all the papers that were submitted. We're working on our opinions. We're meeting with groups. So why is that interesting? It's a lot of reading and writing, okay? Yeah, you just shook your head. Because we're involved in the most important legal decisions of the United States and sometimes the world. You know, we are deciding whether something violates the Constitution or not, and what a law means or doesn't mean. And to be a part of decisions that affect so many people is very, very big a burden, but a great responsibility. And none of these cases are easy. You know, we only take cases mostly when the courts below have disagreed, which means that we're answering the questions that are just not clear. And so if they're not clear, they're hard questions. And everything we do affects somebody. Because somebody's going to win, but you know what happens when somebody wins a case? Exactly. And so every decision I render, even when I think it's right, because I voted with the majority, because I think that that's the right answer, I always realize that there's someone else who thinks that I haven't been fair to them. So that's why it's a hard job. But it's also one where you feel a big responsibility and how it keeps you interested. I want to get my answers as right as I can. So I would love for you to come to the courts. Okay, one last question. Tell me your name.
Asmina Gala I'm 11th grade from John I. Leonard High School. Having such a troubled background, how did you keep your spirits up? How did you drive yourself to be better every day?
I want to answer this by saying that you don't have to have what I had to be able to do what I did. And so I think the reason for me that I had that drive was because I was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at age 9. And I started taking injections right away. And I gave myself injections. It is not true today. I put a big exclamation point. What I'm going to say to you is not true today. Back then, they didn't know that much about diabetes, especially juvenile diabetes. And people tended to die very young from it. It was just statistically, people didn't live mostly past 40. And so I thought I was going to have a very short life. And that's not true. I'm now 60. So things changed. They've gotten better care. They understand the disease better. And people don't die at 40, okay? But that fear is what kept me motivated to live every day to the fullest. I didn't want to pass a day unless I learned something new, did something new. I was so excited about squeezing out of every day of my life something important, that's what kept me motivated. Now, you don't need to have a disease to realize that life is very short. And if you don't take advantage of it, you're just going to lose it. It's going to go through your fingers like sand. Because days go by, and sometimes you don't do or learn something, and you've lost them. You're not going to get back a day that you wasted. Now, when I say wasted, every once in a while I have to rest too. That's not a wasted day, okay? But before I go to bed at night, I have 2 questions I ask myself. It's the last 2 questions of the night. What did I learn new today? And by that I mean, what new idea did I think about? What new thing about the world did I learn? What new thing did I learn about people? It could be new anything, but it has to be something new. And the second question is, what good thing have I done for someone else? Now, sometimes it's a lot of, a big good thing. But sometimes it's a small one, like, what aunt have I called who I haven't spoken to in ages? If you guys have some aunts who keep you on the phone forever, you know you're making a sacrifice? No? It's okay to do that every once in a while, to be nice to another person. Just because being a nice person will help you grow as a person. And so those are my 2 questions at night. How do I stay motivated? Keep trying to do something like that. Then you'll make each day count. Well, I think Gail is standing back there. She's the head of the forum.